Welcome to the Rescue One podcast. Each week we talk about challenging the way we do business in the fire service when it comes to mental and physical health. I believe there's a better way to do it, and I want to bring in experts that can teach us exactly how and why we should be doing things differently for the sake of our longevity on and off the job. If we can just rescue one of our brother or sister firefighters from preventable injury, illness, or disability, then we've done our job. Thanks for listening. Hey everybody, welcome back. Thanks for listening. This week we got Chris Torres. He's a firefighter in New York, and he is a coach, an athlete, and he competes through CrossFit. I wanted to bring him on to talk a little bit about fitness, a little bit about the job, a little bit about mental health, some really cool stuff he's doing with Next Rung that I'm a huge fan of. If you guys have listened to us at all or follow us on social, you know that I love their mission. So please welcome Chris. And I'll let him introduce himself because I feel that nobody knows themselves better than themselves. So, Chris, have at it, man. Thank you for being here.
What's going on, guys? John, thank you for having me on. Yeah, my name's Chris. I've been a firefighter close to 9 years now in New York. I've been a coach longer than I've been a fireman. I got into coaching as a result of my preparation for the academy. And about 5 years ago, I started a company, basically, called IGY6 Fitness, or long name, IGY6 NYC Fitness, or I got your six, New York City, with the goal ultimately of preparing aspiring firefighters for the fire academy, police academy, corrections, whatever it is. If you're a first responder, the goal was to get you as prepared physically for the job as possible. And that's been more than anything else, a labor of love. I've been able to do some cool things with that.
Yeah, that tells me that you're probably doing it right. So if it's a pain in the ass, then you know, it's
definitely. I mean, like I said, I wouldn't think about it, but it's definitely tough.
Yeah, of course. And so I mean, you've been a coach longer than you've been in the fire service. What kind of led you to make that jump or get into the fire service?
All be told, I didn't sign myself up for the test. My cousin, actually, who's a captain, signed me up for the test. I was kind of a rudderless ship coming out of college. I was playing Division III baseball, realized that, baseball definitely was not a future career choice. I kind of figured that out early on. Graduated from college and was about to jump into nursing school. And my cousin was like, hey, I signed you up for the test. You're taking it. I'm like, great, fantastic. Started the studying process. And the more I started studying for it, the more I kind of fell in love with it. And I was like, all right, this is going to be something I'd like to ultimately do. Yeah. And it worked out very well from there. I got my score on the test, realized that I did very, very well. Got my list number, and I was like, all right, this looks like it's it. So pretty much before I started nursing school, I was like, all right, this is where it is. And I kind of shifted my focus from preparing for nursing school to preparing for the fire service.
Yeah. And so you never finished the nursing stuff. You didn't go down that route. You just stuck with the fire service.
No, which looking back at it now, it's probably a really, really good career choice.
For sure. Yeah, man. Nothing on nursing, but I've never met a ER nurse that happily retired out of the ER. It's just rough. Like that is an absolute, soul sucking job. And
as much as firemen like to complain about their jobs, it really ain't that bad relative to the other things we could be doing.
I hear you. So with IGY6, I know, and I follow you guys on Instagram. I've been, watching what you guys are doing. This is a fitness and gym program that is specifically for first responders, correct? It's not just firefighters?
It's aimed at first responders. Ultimately, with the way this program's put together, it is for everybody. However, the way I program and the way the program itself is put together is geared toward individuals preparing for the academy.
Yeah.
Right now, I have about 4 clients preparing for an academy. And I have upwards of 12 to 15 people per session in my in-class setting.
Oh, that's cool.
But however, how I program is geared more toward those 4 individuals and the needs that they are looking for. So I'm not a big fan of quote-unquote big box programming where here's the programming, it's good for a few hundred people, right? If I do have a handful of remote training clients, but each program that they're following is geared toward their specific needs. So though it is geared toward those in the fire service, it is just overall a very good strength and conditioning program.
And as far as the big box stuff goes, why don't you like it? Is it just not effective for individual people?
It's kind of a loaded question. If you know how to work out and you've been in fitness or the fitness industry for an extended period of time, odds are that programming, depending on what you're looking for, works for you. Like for myself, I do follow a workout program called Proving Grounds Fitness. Guy is phenomenal. I'm training to compete, right? I'm still in that competitive mindset where I need to get my body as prepared as humanly possible for whatever comes up in the CrossFit Open, the quarterfinal round, the occupational games. But I've also been doing this for 10 years. That style of working out doesn't necessarily translate well to somebody who may not have the working knowledge of how to train, how to properly move, which is where we come in. We're the means of production, but we also want to teach people how to build the machine.
Yeah.
So the idea, aside from getting you to come in and having a great workout, is to teach you how to properly move, what to feel, what not to feel when you're lifting, and where you can push yourself, where you need to push back. So we're in an education in fitness that's a little bit more hands-on than, say, some of the larger scale programs that are put out there, like a Misfit, like a Jumping Ship, which, no slight against them, it's great programming if you know what you're doing. Yeah. Odds are if you come into IGY6, it's not that you're out of shape or that you're in terrible shape, is that you're not sure how to get yourself back into shape, where you might need the additional push. So we like to think of ourselves as not necessarily a school of fitness, but a tutorial in how to train, and then bring that and carry with you for the remainder of your career.
That's cool. So you could be doing guys that are trying to, guys and girls, I always say guys, but you know what I mean, guys that are trying to get on, or maybe people that are already on that have not been in the gym like they want to, or they're trying to do something more of like what you're doing with conditioning rather than like traditional stuff, and kind of everywhere in between. Is that like a fair way to say it?
Correct. Yeah, I mean, I have current MOS that train with me on both sides of the job. And I say both sides, I mean police and fire. Some have found me through them just trying to get a hold of their own fitness and their own fitness goals. And then some of them are just holdovers from people who have trained with me prior to their time in the academy. So, like I said, it's overall a very, very good strength and conditioning program, with the focus being I try to make it as job specific as possible, or try to recreate the stimulus of what it would be like operating on a fire ground or running down a perp, whatever it might be.
Yeah. And you're basically serving people mostly in your area. I see you post a lot of stuff online. Do you do stuff like coaching online or social or anything like that?
I have several remote training clients that are trying to get on various departments, everywhere from Denver, Colorado to Cal Fire. It's remote training. Yes, I'm writing programming for them, and I do as best as I can. If I send somebody a week of programming, it comes across as about 10 pages worth of stuff, because I do like to be as clear as possible. There are a lot of notes, but there's also a lot of back and forth, almost banter, where I'll reach out to them, hey, what feedback do you have for me? And then I'll give them a little bit of feedback on things I feel they might need to do differently, or things that I'd like to see from them. So what you're seeing on our social media page is just a conditioning piece that we're generally doing. Not generally doing. Why am I saying generally? The conditioning piece that we're doing for the session, which is why I post about 3 to 4 times a week. I eventually would like to post more, but I don't program for the sake of programming. Everything that happens for a reason. That conditioning piece that is posted online ties directly in to the strength, accessory, mobility, core stability pieces that we're doing in our sessions.
I love that. That's cool. You said you're still competing. What have you been doing? I mean, I know, but for everybody listening, kind of like tell everybody how you've been competing and where you're at with that.
So I've been competing for the last 10 years. Nothing big. I mean, I've never made it to Madison or Carson, California for the games, obviously, because I'm still a relative unknown in the fitness space. At the local level, I've done a lot of local competing. I have competed at U.S. Police Fire Championships. The last time they had it was, I believe, 2021. This past year, unfortunately, they did not have a CrossFit event. It happens. I did have plans of competing in Rotterdam at World Police Fire Championships. I think that's what the World Police Fire Championships games, whatever it might be. I would say within the last 3 or 4 years, I've started to step up into some higher level competitions. Did something pretty cool this past year for the CrossFit Open in 2021. CrossFit likes to usually do a head-to-head during workout announcements, which to my understanding initially was the plan, but we got bumped for, athletes who people knew. So CrossFit did a feature on us, and CrossFit HQ, not just the random gym. CrossFit HQ did a feature of police versus fire, FDY versus NYPD, and I was selected by the Barbell Club, the CrossFit team, to represent the department, and I squared off against a really, really good athlete for PD, who had actually competed at the teams levels at the games with a very well-known CrossFit affiliate out here. I ultimately won, and it came down to the last couple of seconds where I was able to just edge this guy out. My first bigger level competition where I was kind of, and my coach is also in the service. She's phenomenal. Probably one of the biggest ball breakers I know, and it hurts because she's Canadian and they're supposed to be really polite, was the 2019 Reebok Underground Games up in Collingswood, Ontario. That was an eye-opening experience. It was like, man, I was a big fish in a little pond, and now I'm just a moderate-sized fish swimming with sharks here. I got my ass kicked. But at that point, I was like, all right, I know what I have to do and how I have to train. But the long story short is I've been competing for a long time, and I've kind of stepped up my game in the last couple of years where I've started to hit my stride.
But you had mentioned a lot in there that I wanted to ask you about, because you're saying that a lot of the competition and how you've been preparing for it as mental as it is physical. I think this kind of dovetails into how I wanted to bring up Next Rung and what you guys do, because a lot of the stuff that I see you and Blake putting up is very physically oriented. But, you know, when we talk about mental health, it's a lot about the talking to people. It's a lot of understanding the psychology of how depression and PTSD and anxiety and all these things kind of like culminate. But you guys kind of attack it from a different angle. And Next Rung has really grown since it started. And I think that it has a great message. But tell me more about the physical side of it, because I think you are also, I don't know how else to say it, like a mental athlete, you know, and I know a lot of top athletes are. How does that mental side and the physical side connect, in your opinion?
So the answer to that is how the physical side and the mental side come together. That's almost on a person-to-person basis. Like I said, my story in fitness was, all right, I don't look great. Let me get myself together. And then that kind of parlayed into me doing a lot of other things, to the point where the gym became an outlet for whatever I was going through. With Next Rung, I was actually just a supporter. At first, I was affiliated with another organization, and once I started doing my thing with IGY6, I started talking with Blake a little bit more. Blake's probably one of my best friends right now, and I'm sure that's going to gas him up when he hears that.
I'll clip that and I'll send it. I'll DM it to him.
Oh, you have to. That has to be sent right to him.
Okay.
Almost.
All right, got it.
But you know, it started off with me speaking with Blake, and then I was going through some really dark and some really tough stuff. Stuff that I didn't think I was going to be able to make my way out of. And through that process, you know, Blake himself, one of the real movers and shakers within that organization, took me and took the kid gloves off and dug in on me and kind of brought me back where I needed to be. And at that point, I kind of made the conscious choice where I kind of want to hitch my wagon to these guys and help them in any way I can.
Yeah.
And it started, Blake had actually pitched the idea of, like, listen, because he's a big CrossFit guy, fitness guy as well. Hey, I've always had this idea of doing like a fitness throwdown competition where we can highlight the physical preparedness of first responders, but tied into the mental aspect of it. And collectively, we came up with this idea of strong mind, strong body.
Yeah.
Where, you know, one needs the other. Where the stronger you are physically might help you mentally. And sometimes building the mental toughness could happen in the gym. And that generally transitions very well to the fire service. And with that came the birth of the throwdowns, which we're currently in the process of setting up. But diving back into Next Rung, we both felt that it was the perfect marriage where one needs the other to survive. That's not painted with broad strokes here. I mean, what we do may not work for some people. And by we, I mean the strong mind, strong body, the physical aspect of it. What Next Rung does is unbelievable. I'm actually one of the peer supporters now with him. So aside from...
That's awesome.
Yeah, aside from initially being helped by these guys, now I'm in the position to help others who may not necessarily have the means to help themselves. And just with the financial support that Next Rung offers to people who might not be able to get the help they need, sometimes being able to speak to another firefighter about what you're going through, or someone who can relate, not just somebody with a degree, can make all the difference. So with that tie-in with them and what we do, in my opinion, it only makes sense that IGY6 and Next Rung, or more specifically, let me rephrase that, Next Rung and IGY6, because they're the right now they're one of the biggest motivators I have to continue on with IGY6 in whatever capacity I can. What they do is unbelievable.
Yeah, it is. I stumbled on them from social media, and I've been a big supporter of that organization. And, you know, I didn't know you were one of the peer supporters now. I think that's awesome. I know that there's a group of them. And for everybody that doesn't know, Next Rung is an organization that was started by firefighters for, there you go. I love that decal. I got them. I got a few of them.
Yeah, so do I. They're everywhere at this point.
Yeah, and you know, I think that's the cool thing is like the name is getting out there because I think it's more practical than. And listen, if you got to go to EAP, it's a valuable tool, but there is an in between there, and I think a lot of people are afraid to take the step because they don't feel that they're going to be understood. And I think that the big thing that you guys do is you put it out there that your first responders that are willing to listen to other first responders, and it's zero friction to get started. All you have to do is text the phone number, and I don't remember the phone number offhand.
Yeah, we'll somehow throw it on the screen.
Yeah. You text this phone number, and you're going to be connected with first responders from somewhere in the country. There's a small group of them. It's not a huge organization where everybody's just a number, but you got guys and girls on there like Chris that understand the job and understand what you've been going through, and you're connected directly to these people. And I think that's a big thing. I mean, everybody's a trained peer supporter, and you can get this connection immediately. So,
and more often than not,
cool.
Aside from us being, and I'm sorry to cut you off, being trained peer supporters, a lot of us, and you know, have gone, excuse my French, a lot of us have gone through this shit before.
Of course.
We've been in really tough spots and we didn't quite know how to cope. That was my thing. I was dealing with some stuff where I really didn't know how or what I was supposed to be feeling, or if I was all right for feeling this way. And a lot of the peer supporters, again, I'll preface myself, have been through that. So you're not just talking to somebody who went through a weekend course, is like, yeah, you know what, let me open my mouth and pretend like I know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
No, you're talking to somebody who may be giving you the same advice they once received themselves.
I think that's big. I'm on the peer support team on my fire department, and one of the things that I always want to let people know is obviously, you know, we're on the job together, but at the same time, everything that they are thinking and feeling, I've already been there. You know, and I'm not trying to say like I'm one-upper, mine's worse than yours kind of thing, but it's more of just the fact that if you're talking to another firefighter who has also seen and done and had to endure the same things, and it's very different because nobody's going to just, at least on my job, nobody's going to immediately go straight to EAP. They're not going to go straight to a psychiatrist or psychologist. They're going to try to talk to their friends first, the people that they trust and that they know. I think that's where it's important, where we can step in and say, what you're thinking and feeling is normal right now. If you hear that they have intentions of hurting themselves, if this is a problem that needs professional help, that we do the referral. You know what I mean? You get them to those people. But yes. I think a lot of times where people mess up, and not intentionally, but it is a mistake, is they hold that shit in and they don't want to talk about it. They don't think that everybody else understands, or they're afraid to get the conversation started. So it's just a nice thing to have, where if you're in a situation where you could just pick up the phone and text and you have that right at your fingertips, that has never been done before, to my understanding, for a firefighter. So that's why I always want to put the message out there that this thing exists. And
100%. I mean, you know, if you look at this logically, firefighting is the ultimate team sport. There's no such thing as somebody operating by themselves. I mean, some guys may go off and do their own things, but ultimately everything we do is coordinated. Why shouldn't that be the same way for mental health? You should be able to talk to each other, to rely on each other, and reach out to somebody else who's on the same team.
Yeah.
Nobody here wants to see anybody hurt themselves or hurt someone else because they don't know how to cope.
Yeah.
Or maybe they do know how to cope, but they don't have the means to cope. It's the kind of thing where, because of the advent of things like social media and technology, that this free resource, is readily available. I don't know the ins and outs of other departments. I don't know if there's things like a counseling service unit or an EAP, like you guys are calling it down by you. I don't know if it's as readily available. So something like Next Rung might be somebody's only means of crisis intervention. I just want people to know that it exists.
Yeah, and it's
they've
free.
done a great job putting themselves out there. The money goes back toward the cause. It doesn't line anyone's pockets. I'm not diming anyone out, or I'm not, throwing anyone under the bus. There's definitely organizations out there. They'll spend the bare minimum on what's they're legally allowed to use for the charity, then everything else gets used on operating expense.
Right.
One of the few organizations where it's like, hey, listen, everything we're doing is for this. It's a beautiful thing.
I think it's awesome. There are very, very few. One of my favorites is St. Jude. They do, 100%. But, if you give to Red Cross, you give to UNICEF, like a lot of these are very top-heavy organizations. And you guys, it's nice that you guys have this. It's basically straight to it. And
if you have a charity organization where their head is making six figures, is a
yes,
charity organization.
It's hard. Yeah. Rescue One's been donating to Next Rung for almost 2 years now. I don't think it's wrong for Next Rung to put it out there and go, hey, look at how much we've done, because it makes people feel good, especially when you're giving money.
It's a flex. It
absolutely
is a flex, but it's
to say it.
It's a flex in the right direction.
Yes.
Like, hey, you're donating to us. This is what we're doing. There's other organizations that'll be like, okay, here's the one or two things we do a year.
Yeah. Well, I've seen it and I put it out there.
You're generating money pretty much year round and at will.
Yeah.
Open your book. Show us where it's going.
I had read a quote that I thought was very applicable. The show Band of Brothers.
Yeah, of course. I one of the few HBO series I've seen on more than 3 occasions.
Oh man, I know, it's amazing.
It's like the first time every time.
The book that Dick Winters wrote, Beyond Band of Brothers, one of the quotes in there on the back, he gets like 10 rules for leaders, and one of them is physical stamina is the root of all mental toughness. I thought that was perfect, like for what you guys are doing. The ability to choose to put yourself through something physically hard is what makes somebody mentally tough. It's like the decision to create pain upon yourself and how much you can actually take. You know what I mean?
I mean, it's very true. Nobody drafted anybody into the fire service.
Yeah.
Everybody who's here wants to be here.
Yeah.
It was given there's a civil service test. I'm assuming almost across the board for this, but you can always say no. Yeah. So by accepting the job, you kind of accept what comes along with it.
It's funny, but like some guys forget that shit, man. They're like, they complain about either training or putting their gear on or running calls. I'm like, yo, you didn't get forced into this. You picked the job that could do it. But the stuff that we can't choose is what happens to us mentally.
Right.
And
the one thing I like to do to differentiate ourselves with it, because there's other first responder, firefighter-owned, police-owned organizations that are pretty much, fuck you. You need to be in shape, and you're a piece of shit if you don't. I'm not that guy.
Yeah.
I've always told myself I refuse to be that guy because I was once upon a time a heavier guy who wasn't necessarily motivated, but just didn't feel comfortable with who I was and felt genuinely put down by some of the things that were said.
Yeah.
I'm here to be a resource. If you want to help, I'm here to help. I'm not going to think any less of you or treat you any differently if you don't, because ultimately fitness is a lifestyle choice that happens to transition very well to being a quote unquote a tactical athlete. I always hated those organizations where it was like, yeah, no, you're a fat piece of trash. Get out of my face. I'm better than you. I can't be that guy.
Yeah.
That flies in the face of everything I'm doing and everything I want to do. And the fact that I'm a part of Next Rung, it flies in the face of portraying a positive image. There's a quote I've used, and I've thrown it on a t-shirt just because I thought it looked cool. We rise by lifting others. Mm-hmm. And that just comes from my own personal experiences working with other organizations and seeing what other people within the fitness industry think openly about other individuals.
Yeah, and also that shit would never work with firefighters. You know, that condescending tone. I mean, it's a quick way to get people to just drop out or not buy in any sense, and they're just gonna not want to put themselves out there for that. It's the same with training. You're not gonna go to training if you think that the second you get there, they're gonna tell you how much you don't know or how much of an idiot you are. Right. It has to be an area of growth and learning. It can't be an area of condescension. Otherwise, it'll never work.
Absolutely. That's 100% true. So, nobody wants to go where they're going to be made to feel like shit.
So what advice do you have for younger firefighters, as far as fitness goals and their whole career?
Build the habit now. There's been a few quotes about how fleeting motivation can be. Mm-hmm. And you know what? That's dead on balls accurate. There's been days where I've woke up, I'm like, yeah, man, I'm just not feeling it. But I've built it into myself where like, listen, this is now just a part of my day.
I wanted to ask you, we just talked about some of the advice that you would give younger guys. And I think creating the habit now, basically you're saying it's like a lifestyle. Right. I think that's really valuable. But what happens if you've been on the job for a while and that lifestyle, changes, or you never really did create a good habit, how do you start that back up? Like, I think it's hard for people to change the way they've been for a long time.
Yeah, you're not incorrect. It comes down to a couple of things. You have to want to do it, first and foremost. You have to be aware that you need to do it. That could occur in a couple of different things. You wake up feeling achy, or, you're at a job and you're a little more banged up or a little more winded than you think you should have been. I mean, also, somebody else can bring it to your attention, whether it's a medical professional, whatever it is. But it's a matter of you wanting to do it. You can't force somebody to get in shape, because it's ultimately going to fail. If you're forcing somebody to do something they don't want to do, more often than not, it doesn't work. So for the older generation, the older firefighter, the older cop, corrections officer, whatever it is, it's got to be a conscious choice to want to get into shape. Whether that's circumstantial or you're just that self-aware, but it's ultimately a choice. So it's not something that can be forced or imparted, but it's literally a personal choice.
Right. And I think sometimes that's kind of hard, like, to see for yourself. It's that whole law of motion, man. Like, an object is going to keep doing the same thing it's doing until something else changes it. So if you're listening and you think, like, that has to be you can be the thing that changes it. You don't have to wait for somebody else. But if somebody else does come up to you and is like, hey, man, you're looking a little out of shape, or, hey, you used to be able to do this a little easier, don't be offended by it. Take it as somebody who gives a shit. You know what I mean? Somebody cares and they're trying to tell you, like, get better. Because it's like you said, do you want to have a life after the job? You know what I mean? Like, do you want to have longevity, or do you want to just be completely incapacitated once you leave? Because ultimately that's what we're building up, right? So
100%. And it's not something that you're not going to not notice.
Yeah.
You'll see it as guys get closer toward their retirement or whatever it might be. You can be like, hey, listen, I mean, you can tell when somebody's going to have a rough time after retirement. If their lifestyle of being fit isn't really instilled, when they have something to go to, when they have something to actively work for, imagine what they're going to do when there's nothing tying them to having any kind of physical fitness, which is why I've always, or attempted to impart, habit.
Yeah.
And how habit needs to be built and maintained. Because like anything else, if you don't maintain it, it's very easy to break or lose a good habit. Likewise, it's also very easy to pick up a bad habit. It's very easy to be lazy.
Yeah.
It's very easy to not want to get up off the couch. I've had days like that where it's like, yeah, you know what, maybe I'm not doing this today, but what keeps me going is habit. And I do enjoy it. I mean, I'm probably a little bit of a glutton for punishment with how I train. Because, listen, I mean, I'm not by any stretch of the imagination an older guy, but you do anything long enough, whether it's in the way I treat fitness, I do treat fitness as a sport. Yeah, it's going to wear you down. So you may have to modify certain things, but doesn't mean it's something that you drop altogether. It's a habit that needs to be built, modified, and made to accommodate you.
Yeah. What is your favorite thing to kind of get you going if you have a day where you're feeling kind of shitty or lazy or whatever? What kind of gets you a kick in the ass?
Man, that's a great question. But again, treating this purely as an endeavor of sport or an endeavor of athleticism, I hate the feeling that I'm being outworked by somebody. That somebody I could potentially be competing against is out there working their ass off and is going to really stick it to me in a competitive setting. So sometimes it's like, let me get this working because I know someone else is out there trying to beat me. And then there's other days where it's just like, you know what the fuck am I doing at home? Get your ass to the gym. It really all varies and depends on my mood. But more often than not, it's not wanting to be outworked.
Yeah. I don't think that's common, though. You know what I mean? I think that is strictly, and I wouldn't even say most athletes. I would say only athletes that are trying to be top tier or are top tier. Like, you're going for something that's extremely competitive. The CrossFit Games, all the first responder head-to-head stuff, that's like very individualized where it's all on you. You know what I mean? And you're sitting around going,
you don't want to show up with the name on your chest and ultimately disappoint yourself or whoever's backing you.
Yeah.
That's definitely a part of it. But my toughest critic's always been myself and how I perform, even in competitions where I've outright won or won the competition with a share of first place. It's what could I have done differently to separate myself here or whatever it might be, whether it's strategy, technique, condition, whatever it is. So, I mean, the hardest critics should be yourself.
Yeah.
But if you need the added motivation of other people, don't be afraid to kind of take an outward look and be like, all right, listen, I did something differently because of this person.
Yeah.
Or this person brought this to my attention. So CrossFit could sometimes be an ego-driven sport. Some people train to compete because they don't want to lose. sometimes that just might be the mindset that a lot of people need to take for themselves, where it's, I don't want to lose or I don't want to disappoint somebody, let alone myself.
Yeah.
And in the fire service, that's making sure everybody goes home safe, or making sure you're able to go home to your wife and be able to manage the life, kids, whatever it might be. So it's whoever is working out needs to find their why, needs to find their reason why they do what they do.
Yeah, I think that's the hard part, because I think a lot of times it doesn't get it there. And then the other thing too is, and this happens to me, but I'll get into a mode of consistency where I'm like going to the gym consistently, and then I'll have one day where I can't make it, or I choose not to make it, or something happens and I make an excuse not to go, and then it's like, that's now the pattern where I'm like, oh, I didn't go yesterday, I'm not going to go today. And then, a lot of people are looking to say, like, if I'm having a lazy day, I can take this pre-workout, or I can do this one thing, or I can get music going, or I can get, like, they have like a little tip or a trick. But ultimately, it's like you said, if you're driven, that's short term. I find that if I put a goal to myself and have a really good why behind it, then it's achievable, because it doesn't matter what all the other stuff happens. Like you said, you've gone to the gym hungover before. Like, who the hell would want to go to the gym? No, but that's what I'm saying. Is like, well, I mean, I can't let my decisions yesterday affect my need to go to the gym today. So
right.
that
comes back to the idea of habit. It was like, sure. It wasn't a question, and this was relatively recent. Whereas I was coming off of taking a promotional exam. And I was, I went out just to kind of level out and just kind of reflect on everything that just happened. Mm-hmm. And it really wasn't a question of whether or not I was going to go to the gym the next morning or whether I was going to train. It was just going to be like, all right, listen, I know I'm going to go on this. I'm probably not going to feel great. But the question of whether or not I was going to train wasn't a question. I had instilled that habit of being able to just be like, make it a part of my day, a part of who I am and what I do, as opposed to making it an option. Yeah. Make anything an option, more often than not, you're going to take the easier route. When it's no longer an option, it's just a part of your day, and you go out of your way to allot that time, it's almost no thought. It's you're reacting, you're going to the gym, you're doing what you have to do.
Yeah. I read a book, Atomic Habits, and this dude was talking about people that stay consistent in the gym. He's like, the most important days in the gym are the ones where you do the shittiest. Like, if you're going there and you only spend 20 minutes when you're supposed to spend an hour, but you went, that's what's going to form the habits, because it's easy to go when you want to go. You know what I mean? Right. When you're in the mood, when you slept great, when you're full of energy, when you don't have shit else to do, those are the easy days. The hard days are when you don't want to go, but you still went, and that reinforces all of the other good days. You know what I mean? Because it's like,
absolutely.
I love that.
And from the competitive mindset, looking at this from the lens of fitness being a sport, more specifically CrossFit, those are the separator days. Mm-hmm. Those are the days where
like that
you are actively outworking whoever woke up and said, yeah, fuck it, I'm not doing it today.
Right.
Those are the days where you'll see that little extra that'll put you over the top. Now, I mean, in regards to job functionality, it's a little bit of a different situation. If you're physically worn down, coming off of a shift, bad nights, they happen across the board, by all means, take that day and recover. But as long as you're recovering and just not using it as excuse to not go to the gym, or not to train, or to not do whatever. But you're 100% right. The days where you're lacking the motivation are the days where a lot of personal growth in and of itself does occur. You find out a lot about who you are and how you operate on days where you just don't want to do it.
Yeah, it's like that quote, physical stamina is the root of all mental toughness. It's legit. So, Chris, if somebody wants to get a hold of you, what's the easiest way? I know you're on Instagram. Is there, or if they want to, if they're in the New York area and they want to go to your gym?
We're based out of Coney Island Fitness, which is actually in Coney Island, off of Cropsey Avenue. If you want to get a hold of us, it's very simple. We're very accessible. Me and my wife both run IGY6. We're partners in the business side of it and the fitness side of it. Who the hell am I kidding? Instagram, email, whatever works. So for Instagram, it'll be at NYC_IGY6 Fitness. Or you can reach out to us via email. It's going to be coach@IGotYour6NYC6.com. And we usually answer relatively quick. One of us always has our phone no more than 5 feet away from us. And you usually get an answer for better or worse. We also do the whole remote programming thing. Like I said, I always prefer to be hands-on with somebody. So, it's easy. I can explain so many things through words, but until I physically get my hands on you and move you in a position that you need to be in, I always prefer the in-house thing. We are going to be doing more throwdowns. Right now, we're definitely going to be doing the New York City throwdown. Georgia's still on the table, and we are actively in talks with 2 other locations in 2 separate states, in 2 other states, to do another Next Rung throwdown. And if you're interested in me coming in or us coming in and hosting a Next Rung throwdown or a fundraiser event for Next Rung, do not be afraid to reach out to us, where we're willing to, because ultimately everybody benefits in the process. So please, if there's any questions, don't be afraid to reach out to anyone at Next Rung if you want to either donate or host an event to generate funds for the work that Next Rung does.
Awesome. So we're going to put all that stuff in the show notes so people can just check that out. So we'll have it on our YouTube channel. The Instagram is more of a preview of like the full thing, but on our podcast as well. So,
Awesome.
Chris, thank you. Thank you so much, man.
Channel as well. As now that I have the influx of time, I'll be doing a lot more movement demos. But yeah, no, I'll throw this episode up on our YouTube channel. So we'll, not that I have a ton of followers, but hey, we got to start somewhere.
Amen. And that's why we want to get the word out, both for you and for Next Rung.
Awesome.
All the work you guys do. So thank you so much, man. Good luck on the results of the test. Let me know how you do.
Absolutely.